if you know what your focus is for each of those engagements, be prepared, right? Bring materials. If you know that you're being not necessarily evaluated, but if you know the topic is technical fluency, for example, come prepared with some real examples, whiteboard instead of talking. Or if you know that it's a presentation skill topic, then, bring a leave behind or get creative, right? And so I'm blown away constantly by how many people just don't simply ask what the focus is. And subsequently, those that don't ask are surprised why they didn't make it to the next level, right?
All right, so today I have the honor of speaking with Emily Hoffman. Emily is currently the Executive Director of Enterprise LiveRamp. We'll talk about what that means in a minute. She has worked at some amazing companies, Segment, Media Math, the Wall Street Journal. That's where I got to work with her back in the day. She's had this amazing career. She has hired and interviewed a lot of people. She's seen the good, the bad, the ugly when it comes to how candidates handle and manage the interview process. And so today we want to talk about how you can be a better interview candidate from the perspective of a hiring manager, someone who actually makes hiring decisions, what to do, what not to do, and not just the places like LiveRamp. Really, this is advice you can apply anywhere, and whether you're currently interviewing or plan to be interviewing in the next few months or even next few years, how can you be the best possible job candidate? That's what we're going to talk about today. So Emily, once again, thanks so much for being here. It's awesome to see you.
Thanks, Steve. I'm so excited to be here and obviously to be chatting with you after so many years together. So thanks for having me.
You bet. I'm really excited. Let's dive in. And so kind of talked about Executive Director of Enterprise at LiveRamp. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what that means. What do you do? What does LiveRamp do?
Yeah. So essentially at a higher level, LiveRamp enables companies and their partners to really connect, control, and activate data to transform customer experiences and to really generate more value, more business outcomes, and use their data most effectively. So what I actually do, I'm in a sales leadership role within our CPG and retail vertical. And really my focus is to help make it easy for our most strategic global partners to use their data safely and effectively so that really they can wildly delight their customers in order to reach more shoppers, gain insights to their consumers, drive more sales, and ultimately efficiently deliver every message in the most personalized manner wherever they may be.
Got it. So consumers get messaging that is relevant to who they are and what they're interested in, and businesses can more effectively reach their customers by using their data in really smart ways, right? That's okay,
exactly
great.
Right. Yeah,
Awesome.
In a privacy compliant manner as well, which is really important.
That's a big piece of it. Yeah,
it is.
Privacy.
Absolutely. And I've been at LiveRamp for just under 4 years. I've had a wide variety of roles at the company. And over the last year or so, I've been really honed in on the CPG and retail vertical because there's a lot happening in the space, and I'm super excited about with the merge of retailers getting into the media space and with CPGs trying to find more ways to learn more about their customers. I feel like that's a really great place for me to be right now. So it's an exciting time.
Cool. And for those who are unfamiliar, CPGs, that's consumer packaged goods. So things you typically find on the shelves in a supermarket or in a department store, perhaps. It's a wide range. Often it's stuff you might have in your home or things you might put in your mouth. It's a wide range of products, right? But basically companies who are selling products to consumers, different perhaps than companies who might be selling technology to other businesses. Cool. And so we mentioned earlier, you've had this amazing career. You have built and managed and led teams. How many people do you think you've probably hired over the course of your career?
Wow. Well, I would say, I'm guessing probably somewhere around 50, maybe 50, 75 over the last 20 years, sorry. Yeah, so quite a bit. I've probably interviewed hundreds, right? Maybe a lot. So I'm very passionate about this topic, and I continue to be very passionate about the process because there's so much room to leverage that time when you're interviewing and make the most of it. And being in a sales function, I genuinely believe that the interview experience is a time to truly exemplify your strength as a salesperson. Every engagement you have with a client, that's just as important as every engagement you have when you're interviewing. So I'm really passionate about this topic and super excited to dive in.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and obviously, if you're a salesperson, it's a great way to demonstrate your sales capabilities, right? It is all about helping someone understand what you have to offer and should they pay for that value. That said, almost everybody going through an interview process is, in a way, in a sales kind of context, right? They are trying to help the buyer, in this case the employer, understand, why should I pay for your services? That is essentially what is happening. And so even if you're not applying for a sales role, a lot of the advice that we're going to walk through here is very applicable, right? But even extra applicable if you are in a sales role. Cool. So maybe we can start at a high level. Let's say someone wanted to come in and work for you, work for LiveRamp, and they submit an application. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, like, at a high level, like, what does that process typically look like?
Yeah, we have a pretty easy to navigate process at LiveRamp, and essentially, it all starts with submitting your application or submitting your resume. And the first step typically is you're engaged with a recruiting person or someone on the interview panel, someone that is separate from the organization for the role in which you're applying. And so your immediate connection will be with someone in that interviewing role. And they will essentially ask you, to tell a little bit about yourself and really help them understand the relevancy between your background and what we're looking for in terms of that open position. So once you get past that process, then we have a very clear path to what we call an interview panel. And that interview panel is comprised of the hiring manager, a couple of peers of that hiring manager, and then a few cross-functional partners that would be responsible for evaluating and addressing certain topics that are relevant to the function of that role that you're applying for. And so it's really important, when I think about if you wanted to apply for a job at LiveRamp or really anywhere, is it's understanding genuinely what the company that we're looking for and to really parallel and bridge some of those strengths to what is available to you on that description to start with.
Got it. So someone submits an application. One of the first people who will look at that application is probably somebody on the recruiting team.
Exactly.
They're looking for, the job that we've posted. These are the requirements. These are the skills. This is what the hiring manager is looking for. And comparing that with the application, is there a match?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And you can think of almost, I hate to use the term gatekeeper, but it's almost as if the recruiting team is like, you've got to make sure that you can at least get through that first gate. And so it's really important to identify those relevant connections between what the interviewer on the recruiting team is looking for in order for you to get past that, to get through that gate. And so, some best practices there are, obviously I hate to overstate the obvious, but, you really want to make sure that first engagement really hones in on exactly what those specific asks are. And when I say specific asks, I'm also saying, like, make sure that your answers are super specific. Because when we talk in generalities, that doesn't, anyone can talk in generalities, but you really just want to be speaking about, really clear, concise, specific examples so that the recruiting team can say with certainty that you should be moved to the actual panel. So specificity is key.
Yeah, you hit on a couple of really important points there. And yes, the word gatekeeper could have some not great sounding connotations to it, but it really plays an important role, right? Because hiring managers, obviously hiring is an important part of their job, but it is exactly that, a part of their job, right? They have a lot of other things they're doing every single day as well, right? They are leading their teams, they're meeting with customers perhaps, they're meeting with their boss, they're working on projects or setting strategy. There's a lot they're doing. And so they can't possibly review every single application that comes in. And so they have a trusted partner, right, on the recruiting team who is going to help them kind of filter out, like, okay, here are the people who, from what I can see in the application, look like a really good match for what you're looking for. You should look at this person, right? And so if you believe you're qualified, make sure that you are highlighting your qualifications, and to your point, be really specific, match it up with the requirements for the job so that it's easier for the recruiter to pass you on to the hiring manager, right? Because they have to make a case for, hey, here's why I think you should look at this candidate, right?
Yeah, and I think like one of the big things that our recruiting team is really focused on is industry relevancy, right? And so particularly with the convergence of, the ad tech and the martech space, and this is applicable really in any industry, is you really want to make sure that your background is relevant from an industry perspective. And so that's one of the biggest issues that we are faced with, is really trying to find folks that have even if you maybe don't have 20 plus years experience or 8 years experience, what is your propensity to learn, and how have you demonstrated the ability to assimilate into an industry? What are some ways that you can showcase that? But a lot of our recruiters are really focused on, is their experience relevant for that industry, and how?
Yeah.
And if it isn't, how have you shown that you've been able to adapt before?
That's a good point, right? Because a lot of companies are looking for some gauge on how quickly can this person make an impact.
Correct.
And
Path to value.
Right, yeah. If they know the industry, they'll probably have an accelerated path to impact. If they don't know the industry, they can still have impact. And it's a question like, well, how long might it take? And have they demonstrated that they're able to adapt to new industries very quickly? And if so, that gives us confidence, right, that they could probably move pretty quickly and make an impact at our company too.
100%.
So you mentioned interview panel.
Yes.
Now, sometimes some companies use these terms a little differently. In some cases, that is literally like you're in front of 3 or more people at the same time. In other cases, it is you will meet 3 or 4 people over time, but you'll meet each of them individually. Are you, anything you're able to share with how LiveRamp or how you've typically seen that done?
Yeah. So typically, and at least through the lens of sales, which is oftentimes quite similar for other functions within our organization, is typically you meet with the hiring manager next. The hiring manager is really trying to understand more about how you would parlay some of your past experiences in through the context of the team today. And the hiring manager would precede an engagement with 3 other different people subsequently. And then finally, you would have a presentation with about 3 other people at the same time. And so typically what I recommend, and what I've seen and what I've experienced in my career, is that you really want to understand what each engagement is tasked with evaluating or tasked with covering, right, from a thematic perspective. So oftentimes you're going to meet with different groups of people or individuals, as I just mentioned, and each of them are looking for something specific, right? So one might be looking for you to do an interview deep dive or a resume deep dive and really showcase some specific attributes from your resume. Another might be looking to hone in on, let's say, conflict resolution or challenges and how you've overcome certain challenges. And another we might look at a specific like ways in which you negotiate or getting into a deal cycle. Right? You can extract that same thought and that same paradigm into other functions besides sales. But really what you want to understand for each engagement that you have throughout your interview experience, you want to know what exactly that that the theme is that they're covering so that you can get right to the punch. And I think, one of the things I always recommend is just ask, right? So going back to the recruiter, person that's really responsible for quarterbacking that interview process is a wealth of information. And there's nothing holding you back from asking, hey, would you mind sharing exactly what the specifics are that each of these teams are going to be covering so I can be most prepared?
It's a great point, right? So a recruiter, their job is to help build teams. And if they have gotten to the point where they feel like you would be a great addition to the team, I want you to meet more people, at that point, they want you to succeed. And so use them as a resource, right? I think that's a great, often overlooked opportunity from what I see is like people don't tap into that. They've got someone there ready to help them, right? Help figure out who am I meeting, what themes are important to them. And I love that point around themes that you mentioned.
And then, also, when I think about And I am a big advocate and proponent of asking for asking as much as possible, because speak their language. So one person might be on point to talk about negotiation skills or presentation skills, and another person might be evaluating how technical you are. And so if you know what the focus is, then you can actually speak the language of that focus. And without knowing that, you might be taking things in a direction that might not be doing you the most justice or my service, right? Which could prevent you from moving forward. And I would also say, through that lens, if you know what your focus is for each of those engagements, be prepared, right? Bring materials. If you know that you're being not necessarily evaluated, but if you know the topic is technical fluency, for example, come prepared with some real examples, whiteboard instead of talking. Or if you know that it's a presentation skill topic, then, bring a leave behind or get creative, right? And so I'm blown away constantly by how many people just don't simply ask what the focus is. And subsequently, those that don't ask are surprised why they didn't make it to the next level, right? So if we ask and we're prepared, then we stand out. And by standing out, you're memorable. And I think that is why so many folks are confused about why they don't move forward.
That's great. And that's the opportunity, right? So you heard it here. Most people don't do these things. And so if you do, you will stand out. So take a little bit of extra time and think about, I love this idea of themes. A lot of people tend to talk about their career purely chronologically, in many ways just kind of reciting their resume, which is redundant, right? Everybody you meet with already has your resume. They know where you worked and when. You don't need to recite that for them. But you can help.
In fact, don't do it. Don't recite it.
Don't talk about that, right? Instead, kind of break your career up into these themes, right? Over the course of my career, leadership has been a constant theme throughout my career, right? Here are examples across all the different places I worked where I've demonstrated leadership, or here's an example of how I demonstrated technical fluency. For example, I did this at this company and this at this company, and have some depth in those themes, because each interviewer is going to want to go deep, right, in each of these kind of thematic areas. Is that
absolutely? Yeah, I think sort of on that note, going back to the notion of being prepared and being prepared thematically, it's important to leverage that connection with the recruiter who is spearheading this endeavor, for multiple reasons. Like, ask them, hey, what is the gap on the team, right? So for example, for a sales role, what is it that is going really well with some of your highest performing sellers? Conversely, what are some of the areas that are some of these gaps that I could potentially fill? Like, that information is gold. And if you can leverage that information to inform your engagements with each of these interviewers, like, you're going to stand out leaps and bounds. In fact, they're going to want you might even make the process even easier, right? So being prepared starts all the way from asking questions about, what could be improved and what are some of the ways that some of these people that are doing it well, so you can exemplify those traits.
So big takeaway here, every one of these touch points you have is such an opportunity to get a little more information that's going to help you in the rest of the process, right? And so it starts with that recruiter, but that recruiter can help you all throughout the process. They're going to bring you to the hiring manager. The hiring manager, if the hiring manager brings you to the panel, they also, are hoping you're going to succeed there, right? You have enough confidence in this person. Like, I believe they're worth the time of my peers who work in other departments to also meet with this person. Ask questions that will help you make those conversations as productive as possible for both parties, right? For you and for the interviewer, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, one of the things that I love interviewing someone who actually, when I say to them, so tell me a little bit about yourself, right? We always start, how are you doing? Tell me about yourself. You asked me at the beginning, what does LiveRamp do? And I explained it to you, hopefully in a way that you would understand, right? Versus someone who maybe is a engineer or someone who's a product manager. When an interviewer comes to me and I say, tell me about yourself, I want to hear about the person through the lens of why it matters at LiveRamp, right? And so tailor your narrative to the person that you're speaking with. right? And so I think a very clear way to do that would be if you're interviewing for a marketing role and someone says, tell me about yourself, you want to be very specific about who you are to them for what matters to them. And the great thing that's different, that was different from when you and I were, working together 20 years ago, is the internet has all kinds of information. So go on the website, go listen to earnings calls, go and check out people's LinkedIn profiles, for example. Like, there's so much information that is available that our interviewees can be using to help them tell that narrative about themselves through the lens of what matters to the company.
Yeah, I love that. And it might sound like, hey, that sounds like it could take a lot of time to go do that research. Yes, but you are going to invest time in this interview process. And so why not invest a little bit more to make sure that you are getting the most out of that process? You are putting your best foot forward. Take a little bit of extra time to make sure that is a really productive use of everyone's time, that full interview process, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think taking the time. One thing that an example of I would say best practices is that follow-up note after you meet with someone. Like, I'm blown away by how many people don't send follow-up notes. I still don't understand how. Maybe it was just we talked about this last time. It's just when you thank you for the time.
Yeah.
But more importantly, if you're going to write the thank you note, that is an opportunity to demonstrate your communication skills, your written communication skills, and how you can synthesize and take things to the next level. It's an opportunity for you to just put in a couple extra minutes and to show that person that you're interviewing with that they really matter and that you're really jazzed about the opportunity, and here's why. And it doesn't take that long to write a really well-written thank you note. And it actually goes a long way. The alternative is not writing the thank you note. And at the point that I'm at is I probably wouldn't meet with someone or consider them for the role if I don't hear from them again.
Yeah. Yeah. So once again, you heard it here. Most people don't do it. So if you do, that is an opportunity, right, to stand out. So send the thank you notes. Email is free for the most part, so it's not going to cost you much, right, to send that. It'll take a little time to write it. I would recommend proofreading it, and don't send it from your current employers. I've had people send me thank you notes from their current employer's email. Please go get a free Gmail email address and send it from there. Don't send it from your employer's email address, and proofread it, right? Just make sure that its sentences are correct and you don't have spelling errors. There are lots of free tools, right, to make sure that. But more importantly, to your point, tailor it to the conversation, right? Bring in some things that were unique about what you discussed with that person and remind them of the highlights of that conversation. It goes such a long way, and it's relatively easy to do, right?
And the other thing is like, I think all of us can agree that not every interview we've ever had is the smoothest for whatever reason. Maybe you don't feel well, maybe you were nervous, maybe they weren't really paying attention. Whatever it is, that's very normal for you to walk away from that interview feeling not the greatest about it. Well, guess what? An email, a follow-up email, sometimes to acknowledge, hey, we're human. That wasn't, I didn't walk away feeling that was super strong, and I don't know if you did either, but I just wanted to ask for more time, or I just thought I'd put some thoughts together just to sort of synthesize some of the things that maybe I wasn't clear about last time. I love that notion of human capacity to be brought into the professional space, because we're all human, right? And particularly over the last couple of years, we're all working at home and living at work, right? And so why not acknowledge if it didn't go well? It doesn't mean you're not getting the job. It's actually an opportunity for you to take other measures, communication tools, or even just ask to do it again, right? I mean, I've had candidates ask for a redo, and I love that. I love that.
That's amazing. I love that. That is, I mean, it demonstrates some vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
It demonstrates like, I actually am aware of maybe when I didn't do my best work, and that's a strength, and I'm okay admitting it and asking for another chance. Like, I think that is brilliant. Like, I want to hire that person just, by virtue of that, right? And you're right. I bet a lot of people either aren't aware that maybe they didn't handle that as well as they could have, or they live with that, like, oh my gosh, like I know I did not do my best work, but like I can't do anything about it, right? Like you can.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that goes with so many different scenarios. And I think also, I've had experiences where I've been interviewed and I've been asked questions that I just simply I'm not prepared to answer, or in retrospect, when I got home later, I wish I would have answered it differently. Like, that's okay. My clients, when I'm meeting with clients all the time, I don't know everything right in that meeting. And I'll say, you know what, I actually I want to do more thinking about this. Use that email as the follow-up to say, you know what, I spent the last 24 hours really thinking about how I would have framed it differently. That to me is gold. That's self-awareness. And it's also, you're putting in that extra time and you're able to communicate that effectively. Like, that's a win for everybody.
That's amazing. And you've had candidates do it, I think you were saying, right?
Yeah, and I've done it. And I've gotten the job where I walked away feeling like that's not the way I would have said it if I could do it again. And and it's been helpful for me, and it's been helpful. And I have hired someone who has done that.
That's amazing. So don't be afraid to ask for a do-over. I mean, there's not much downside to it, right? Why not?
Why not?
Yeah. Awesome. So someone goes through the interview loop. What typically happens after that?
Yeah. So I think that I'll answer that question through some best practices. So some of the most proficient interviewers that I've met with, interviewees, have sent wonderful follow-up letters, have oftentimes maybe even sent a video, or have sent a podcast that they've spoken on, or a copy of a book if they're a writer, or whatever it might be, something creative. Some other great examples of things that have happened by some excellent interviewees is they've had someone reach out to me and say, hey, I hear you're interviewing John Smith. I worked with John Smith, 5 years ago. He was phenomenal. It's kind of like, be proactive. Ask someone to be proactive and advocate or endorse you, right? Instead of waiting for the referrals or asking or having your potential employer say, give me references, like have those references proactively reach out.
That's awesome.
I love when that happens. Love when that happens, because who does it? And oftentimes when it's been done, it's someone that I highly respect and they've gone out of their way to find that. So in that case, those would end up in a positive scenario. Typically, when we have our panel, we reconvene, we submit our feedback. We will usually discuss. We all have to, provide our score, and if there's any sort of question or ambiguity, and if this potential candidate has followed up, we might have one more engagement, right? That to me is an opportunity for the candidate to really shine and leverage some of their own creativity to ensure that this is moving in the direction they want it to move to.
Man, I love that. The proactive reference. Good reminder to stay in touch with your references throughout your career. Don't wait until 100%. You kind of need them. Shouldn't be 4 years or 5 years since you reached out. Like, reach out to them all the time. Like, see if you can help them with things. And it makes it a little easier if you would like them to advocate on your behalf proactively. I love that. That is such a smart idea. Don't wait to be asked for references. Have people advocate proactively for you. That's amazing. Well, any parting additional pieces of advice or things that you think people should know about how to be a great interview candidate?
Yeah, my belief is the interview experience is a mutually beneficial experience. It's not just one-sided, right? And so I believe that some of the best experiences that I've had on both sides of this dynamic are when each of you comes with something that you can share with the other. And if you're not getting that from the other person, be prepared to elicit some really interactive dialogue, because you're interviewing them just like they're interviewing you, right? I mean, this is a two-way engagement. So I would say, always be prepared to elicit something from the person you're speaking with to help you understand more about them, just like they want to understand more about you. And always be memorable. think about how many people, Steve, that you've hired or interviewed, over thousands. I mean, I worked with you 20 years ago, and I can only imagine how many people, you probably remember a slither of those, and those people stand out because of various different reasons. So be memorable, and always leave helping, synthesize at the end, and really make sure that they understand why they should remember you, and also why you should remember them. Let them know, hey, these are 3 things that I really enjoyed about our time together, and follow that up, and hopefully that'll help.
I love it. I learned a ton through this conversation. I know people would learn a ton from you if they had the chance to work for or with or alongside you in any capacity, because that was gold. If someone does want to do that, if someone wants to come and work at LiveRamp or work with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, so come find me on LinkedIn, and we're always looking for very exciting, passionate members of the ad tech and martech ecosystem who are interested in wildly delighting customers. So please reach out. We're always looking for talent. Yeah.
Awesome. I will provide the link to your LinkedIn profile in the notes, as well as a link to the career site. If you found this valuable, it would be great if you would hit that subscribe button on the channel. It doesn't cost you anything, but it does help our channel, and it helps make sure that more people get to see content like this. And if you click the little bell notification, you'll get reminded anytime we upload new content like this. So Emily, thanks so much for the time. This has been awesome. I learned a ton. I bet all the listeners and viewers learned a ton as well, and they're going to be better interview candidates because of it. So thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Steve. It's great to see you as always.
Awesome.